It's 6 p.m. on a Monday here in Korea. Welcome to our newscast. I'm Daniel Che. Let's begin first with the headlines. South Korea, the U.S. and Japan issued their first joint statement on North Korea since 2010. Expect closer coordination on deterring the regime's nuclear ambitions. Prosecutors grilled the former head of Korea Development Bank on his alleged involvement in the corruption scandal that may have landed Daewoo shipbuilding in its current dire straits. A stabbing in Minnesota, then bombings in New Jersey and New York. Islamic State has claimed responsibility for one of the blasts, but the U.S. authorities are still investigating possible links to terror organizations in the others. Seoul, Washington, and Tokyo will work on stronger and more comprehensive measures to prevent further North Korean provocations in light of Pyongyang's recent nuclear test. This comes as the top diplomats of the three countries met to discuss other issues like new unilateral sanctions on the regime. Kwon So-ah starts us off with Sunday's meeting in New York.
South Korea, the U.S. and Japan issued their first joint statement on North Korea since 2010 after their meeting Sunday on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly in New York. It said they would closely coordinate policies and expand collaboration in the wake of North Korea's second nuclear test this year and the regime's series of ballistic missile launches. South Korea's Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se emphasized North Korea's nuclear test on September 9th was the strongest ever conducted by the regime.
The recent nuclear test by Pyongyang provided ample proof that its nuclear program has neared the tipping point. Moreover, the test frequency was significantly reduced from 3 years to 8 months.
Minister Yoon and his U.S. and Japanese counterparts also agreed to work on ensuring that the international community fully implements existing sanctions. They discussed further unilateral and multilateral methods to deter North Korea's nuclear ambitions, in addition to the UN Security Council's ongoing talks on a new resolution.
The international society is required to initiate a different response. The US, South Korea and Japan must be in the driving seat to lead the international debate.
U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry once again stated that dialogue with North Korea is only viable under the following premise.
That we are prepared to sit down with the DPRK, providing North Korea is prepared to talk with the rest of the world about responsible approaches to the question of nuclear weaponry.
Later this week, South Korea's foreign minister is expected to send a strong message to North Korea for his keynote speech at the UN General Assembly, with the North's foreign minister Lee Yong-ho expected to be in attendance. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
And after that meeting, South Korea's foreign minister and his Japanese counterpart sat down for a one-on-one. Aside from North Korea's nuclear programs, the two countries' landmark agreement on wartime sex slavery was a core topic. Connie Kim shares with us what was discussed.
South Korean Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se and his Japanese counterpart Fumio Kishida have met more than 10 times since taking office. And their bilateral meeting on Sunday ahead of the UN General Assembly in New York centered on ways to impose heavy sanctions on North Korea in every possible way. Both Yoon and Kishida expressed concern over the North's ever more frequent and threatening provocations in the face of warnings from the international community, which have raised tensions on the Korean peninsula to unprecedented levels. The two agreed to work with the U.S. to seek strong measures to raise the pressure on North Korea, with the support of the international community, including China and Russia. The two ministers also reviewed Seoul and Tokyo's cooperation. South Korea's heads of state and their foreign ministers made swift contact via phone after North Korea's nuclear test earlier this month. And those discussions led to speculation that the Japanese foreign minister may have raised the possibility of reviving a previously abandoned proposal to expand military intelligence sharing to better deal with North Korean threats. Japan's public broadcaster NHK reported that the two ministries saw eye-to-eye in bilateral cooperation in security matters. Regarding Seoul and Tokyo's landmark agreement on the Korean victims of Japan's sexual slavery during World War II, Seoul didn't give specifics, but said it'll thoroughly implement the agreement. Hinting at more regional cooperation, Seoul says the two foreign ministers also briefly discussed plans for the South Korea-China-Japan summit set to be held this year in Tokyo. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
South Korea's National Assembly Speaker and the floor leaders from the main opposition parties returned from an 8-day U.S. trip focused on enhancing cooperation with Congress there. During their stay in Washington, the team led by Chung Se-kyun met with several prominent U.S. politicians, including House Speaker Paul Ryan and House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi. They stressed the importance of the Seoul-Washington alliance in coping with North Korea's escalating nuclear threats. And over in New York, the politicians met with UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon and exchanged views on how to promote peace in Northeast Asia amid the volatile security environment on the Korean peninsula. The South Korean military has named a new chief of Naval Operations and a deputy commander of the Combined Forces Command. The Defense Ministry said Monday Hyun-sung, the former vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, has been nominated to replace Admiral Chung Ho-sup as the Naval Operations Chief. Im Ho-young, the former chief director of the Joint Chiefs Strategic Planning Directorate, has been nominated to replace General Kim Hyun-jip as the CFC deputy commander. The officials could be formally appointed by President Park Geun-hye later in the week, as the National Assembly will hold confirmation hearings on Tuesday. The ministry added the nominees were selected after a thorough review of their qualifications, including leadership and professionalism. Prosecutors questioned the former chief of the state-run Korea Development Bank. Shin Se-min has the latest in the ongoing investigation into allegations of corruption at Daewoo Shipbuilding and Marine Engineering.
The former head of the Korea Development Bank appeared for questioning at the Supreme Prosecutor's Office in Seoul on Monday. Kang Man-soo, who is at the center of a high-profile corruption case, is suspected of pressuring Daewoo Shipbuilding and Marine Engineering to invest in a local biotech firm run by an acquaintance. Daewoo Shipbuilding poured 4.4 billion won, or nearly $4 million into research projects spearheaded by the biotech firm back in 2012 and 13, when Kang was the chairman of the state-run KDB. The bank was the financially troubled shipbuilder's main creditor at the time. Those funds dried up when Kang retired in 2013. Prosecutors are also questioning Kang about whether he funneled projects to construction firms owned by his relatives while in office. The 71-year-old is also suspected of giving loans to local seafood maker Hansung Enterprise, run by Im Woo-geun, Kang's high school friend. But Kang claims he's innocent.
All my life, I've worked for my country. Even during my time in public office, I didn't do anything that I should be ashamed of. I'm sure all the suspicions will be cleared up through the investigation.
Prosecutors launched a full-fledged investigation into Daewoo Shipbuilding and Marine Engineering, the world's second-largest shipyard, earlier this year. They summoned the company's chief financial officer on allegations of accounting fraud last month, and several other company executives have been indicted on corruption charges. With the allegations piling up, Daewoo Shipbuilding is teetering on the brink of collapse as its creditors lose patience with the cash-strapped firm. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Customers who bought the Galaxy Note 7 in Korea will be able to get new ones starting today. The replacements will be available at retail outlets of Korea's three main telecom companies. Our Kim Hye-sung has more on the tech giant's efforts to redeem itself after the battery fiasco.
Samsung Electronics has started providing replacements for its Galaxy Note 7 smartphones in Korea. The move comes 2 weeks after the company announced a massive recall of its large-screen smartphones in 10 countries on September 2nd, amid reports of its batteries exploding or catching fire while charging. Around 400,000 Note 7 smartphones have been sold in Korea, and users of the phone can get the same color replacement at Korea's three main mobile carriers, SK, LG U+, and KT, just by bringing in their device. LG U+ customers can get replacements at any store in the country, and SK and KT customers can get new devices at the store where they made the purchase by September 30th.
We're offering to replace the old Note 7 phones based on the date users activated the device. More than a dozen Note 7 users changed their phones at our shop today, with Samsung expected to provide 90% of its new Note 7 units across the country this week. We'll be able to replace old phones for all users who bought them at our shop by Saturday.
The new Galaxy Note 7 phones show the battery charging icon in green rather than the original white to differentiate it from the old ones. Monday is also the last day for Galaxy Note 7 consumers who either want a refund or who want to cancel their service without a fee. Samsung started the recall process in Singapore on Friday and will start recalling phones in the US on Wednesday. The world's biggest smartphone maker said it will expand the recall program to other countries later this month and will start selling the Note 7 again on September 28th. But with Apple's new iPhone 7 series a hit with consumers and LG set to unveil its new V20 smartphones, it remains to be seen how Samsung will get itself through the Note 7 crisis. Kim Hae-sung, Arirang News.
Korea's southeastern city of Gyeongju, known for its world-famous historical sites, may be designated as special disaster area following last week's earthquakes. According to our Kim In-gee, authorities estimate the losses will qualify the region for emergency relief and financial support.
Korea's southeastern city of Gyeongju may be designated as a special disaster area following two powerful earthquakes that hit the region last week. To be declared a disaster zone, damages need to exceed 7.5 billion won, or roughly $6.7 million. That would qualify local residents for emergency relief as well as special administrative and financial support from the government. The city estimates the damages at around $9.5 million. About two-thirds of that are damages to private property, while the remainder pertains to public facilities as well as cultural assets. On top of that, Gyeongju is also expected to accrue indirect damages due to cancelled accommodations as well as schools postponing field trips to the area. The region has reported over 350 smaller aftershocks since the earthquakes with magnitudes of 5.1 and 5.8 hit last Monday, the latter being Korea's most powerful quake on record. The government has already released a separate emergency relief fund worth about $3.6 million to Gyeongju and nearby affected areas. Since the quakes, local authorities have carried out emergency repairs, and related agencies plan to complete the damage assessments of both public and private facilities this week. They expect to have a clear idea of the total damages by the end of this month. Kim In-gee, Arirang News.
There are some new developments in the three terror attacks that hit the U.S. over the weekend. The New York governor has called the latest blast an obvious act of terrorism, while authorities continue the search for suspects and their motives. Lee Ji-won gives us the updates.
A suspicious backpack with multiple improvised explosive devices was found near a train station in New Jersey on Sunday night. One of the devices went off on Monday morning as the bomb squad was attempting to disarm it, but no one was hurt. Police are investigating to see if it's linked to the bomb that exploded in the Manhattan neighborhood of Chelsea, New York on Saturday, injuring 29 people. 5 people were taken into FBI custody on Sunday night in connection with the blast. According to ABC News, the FBI's New York field office conducted a traffic stop of a vehicle of interest in the investigation. As many as 5 people were taken in custody, but no one has been charged with any crime, and the investigation will continue. Authorities said the blast was caused by an explosive device in or near what appeared to be a dumpster or garbage container. New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio said the explosion was an intentional act, but insisted there was no specific threat against New York City from any terror organization.
We know from everything we've seen so far that this was an intentional act. I want to reaffirm what I said last night. But again, we do not know the motivation. We do not know the nature of it. That's what we have to do more work on.
Shortly after the blast, police sniffer dogs uncovered a second bomb nearby, a pressure cooker with wiring attached. Pressure cookers were used in the 2 bombs detonated at the Boston Marathon in 2013. The incident in New York was one of 3 different acts of terror that rocked the country in a single day and came less than a week after the U.S. observed the 15th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks. About 11 hours before the bombing in New York, a pipe bomb blew up inside a garbage can in Seaside Park, New Jersey, shortly before a scheduled charity race. Fortunately, no one was wounded. In another incident, a Somali attacker who made references to Allah stabbed and wounded 9 people at mall in Minnesota. He was later shot dead by an off-duty police officer. The Islamic State group claimed responsibility for the Minnesota attack, but made no similar claims about the incidents in New York and New Jersey. Iziwan, Arirang News.
We now shift our focus to the world of sports. Korean women golfers continue to impose their presence in the field. The latest to take center stage is Chun In-gee at the final LPGA event of the season. To explain how this victory helped solidify her place in golfing history, here's our Yoon Shin.
Heavy rain may have soaked the fairways, but Mother Nature didn't stop golfing history being made at the final LPGA event of the season. Korea's Chun In-gee did it in breathtaking fashion on Sunday, winning the Evian Championship in France with the lowest ever under-par total in a major, be it male or female. The 22-year-old stunned fans with a 21 under-par 263 over 72 holes, cruising to a 4-shot victory over her fellow countrywomen Yoo So-yeon and Park Sung-yeon. The title gives Chun her second major title following her win at the 2015 U.S. Women's Open. She also jumps 4 spots in the world rankings from 7th to 3rd. Although finishing in a tie for 43rd, Korean-born New Zealander Lydia Ko remains the world's #1 with the best combined record at all 5 majors. Yoon Shin, Arirang News.
And that concludes our newscast for this hour. Thank you for watching.